Today's lesson, how extremely price sensitive consumers are when purchasing a new vehicle. For those who are unaware, Tesla recently introduced the dual motor all-wheel drive Cybertruck with a temporary price of $59,990, which is increasing after February 28th. 25% more affordable starting price than the previous best value Cybertruck, the premium all-wheel drive. When this was first announced by Tesla's official account on X, we saw this question: how much will it be in 10 days? To which Elon Musk replied, depends on how much demand we see at this price level. And it didn't take long before some folks who skew more toward posting rather than thinking and then posting were wondering if this meant that if nobody was ordering these things, maybe the price would drop even more. In a video at the time, explaining why this made absolutely no sense, I estimated that absolute most Tesla could possibly have saved on this model. And I mean, if you're really pushing it, maybe $7,500. Much more likely, sub $5,000 US. More likely, maybe $3,500-4,000. Yeah, they were selling it at a starting price $20,000 below the model from which it was based, but had a few features removed, which is how I calculated the cost savings. I said at the time, this new budget all-wheel drive Cybertruck will have close to zero margin, so as if Tesla's going to lower the price. Are you brain dead? Why would they do that? They won't. It was extremely obvious from Musk's post, if you took the time to think about it, which I again detailed in that video, that the only direction the price on this thing would be moving, if any, would be up. Well, now we have some very compelling insights into how much demand there was at that price level. Soon after the dual motor all-wheel drive Cybertruck dropped at $59,990, the estimated delivery time was June 2026, just a few months away. Today, as I record this, we're now looking at 2027, and there was a brief window of time when the delivery window was estimated as April 27. That's now just changed to 2027, seeming to suggest it could be anywhere later in the year. Translation, there's now a more than 14-month backlog on the entry-level Cybertruck at this temporary price point. Prior to this, Cybertruck sales had been languishing. No surprise as to why. Tesla wasn't quite able to get the price where they needed it to, and by the way, they still haven't quite got there. Inflation adjusted, to hit the original price performance specs for the entry-level Cybertruck, this would need to be about $49,990. Even so, this is massive. As a reminder, Tesla dropped their Q4 numbers, and their other models, which by the way we've now learned includes the soon-to-be discontinued S and X Plus Cybertruck, came in at a whopping, and yes, that's sarcasm, 11,706 produced, with 11,642 delivered. We've learned that with the S and X to be discontinued, first-generation Tesla Optimus production lines will take their place. They're being capital efficient. But if we look at Tesla's most recent data from their earnings report, we can see that their Cybertruck production capacity is in excess of 125,000 units per year. This assumes the lines are running 24/7 at max volume. Obviously not going to happen, but let's say 80% of this amount will be 100,000 per year. Clearly at this point in time, Cybertruck dramatically short of even close to being produced at maximum capacity. Even if you assume every one of these, quote, other models, which again includes the S and X, were all Cybertrucks, you're still looking at less than 50,000 units a year. But if wait times are now 14 months into the future, assume it's a couple of months until they actually start producing, ramping up, it looks a hell of a lot like Tesla has sold many tens of thousands of Cybertrucks in the last 2 weeks alone. Might not be far off 100,000. Do you guys remember this? Via ARK Invest, along the bottom here, we have a vehicle's purchase price in hundreds of thousands of US dollars, starting at 125,000, then 100,000, 75, 50, 25. You get the point. And the percentages here on the left, the addressable revenue share for each price point. Now, this is a good proxy for vehicle sales. It's not one-to-one, but it's close enough for our purposes. Let me zoom in. We see pretty clearly with a price point of 125,000, 100,000, even 75,000, your total addressable market in terms of global revenue rounds down to zero. The technical term for this number is fuck all. Between about 75,000 and 50,000, you're still somewhere in the vicinity of fuck all. Around about 55,000 or so, you see a pretty big increase from about 1% to perhaps 2% of the global market by revenue share by the time you hit about 50,000 US dollars. So look at what's happened here. The most affordable Cybertruck previously was $79,990, temporarily now $59,990. So Cybertruck previously started roughly here, percent of the global addressable market, sod all, $79,990. The new Cybertruck price temporarily started around $59,990, roughly here. And this may have resulted and give or take a 10 times increase in the number of Cybertrucks being sold. As we zoom out further, it becomes very clear, very quickly, that it's not until the mid $30,000 range, roughly here, and from mid 30s to around $30,000, that your addressable market, the number of consumers in essence who can afford to and will purchase your vehicles, skyrockets. Tesla's most affordable vehicles, entry level, are still around here, high 30s, $39,990, $37,990, that sort of vicinity for the entry level 3 and Y. They still haven't reached this point, yet already dominate Model Y, world's best-selling vehicle by revenue for 3 years running. Consumers are extremely price sensitive. Tesla has now effectively run an experiment and collected an enormous amount of data on exactly how price sensitive US consumers are when it comes to a truck. So definitely the last chance for consumers to pick up an entry-level Cybertruck for $59,990. It's going to be very interesting to see exactly how much the price increases on February 28th, especially given the fact that we now know there's a roughly 12-month backlog for these things. Back when this was first announced, and I pointed out that the people expecting the price might be lowered even further were not the sharpest tools in the shed. I also posted this on X, noting that Tesla was selling the Cybertruck, the entry-level Cybertruck, for about a 25% lower price, yet my best guess for the amount of cost to produce it that Tesla had somehow saved was approximately 6.9%, plus or minus about 2%. By the way, this was a serious estimate. Maybe they'd saved about $5,000. Low end, maybe $3,500. On the high end, maybe getting close to $7,500. That should give you some clues as to where the price point might land after the first increase, if Tesla wants comparable margins on this Cybertruck, the dual motor all-wheel drive, versus the premium all-wheel drive upon which it was based. By the way, back in August 2025, about 6 months ago, I saw a video from CNBS posing the question why the Cybertruck had failed to live up to the hype. Reading between the lines, I assumed what they really meant is why it failed to sell hundreds and hundreds of thousands of units per year. At the very start of the video, I had this to say: why the Tesla Cybertruck, quote unquote, failed to maintain its hype. Spoiler alert, Tesla was not, at least at this point, able to get the cost down low enough to make it within the reach of your average truck buyer. Meaning, it's too much of a stretch for most people. Now, admittedly, there's been an enormous amount of inflation since Tesla was originally unveiling their intended specs and pricing. We had the scamdemic, followed by the futile, fascist, inhumane, and completely insane lockdowns, followed by absolutely bonkers financial stimulus, causing runaway inflation. Even so, Tesla wasn't quite able to achieve their intended pricing v-specs on Cybertruck. That's the core reason it's not selling anywhere near as many units as I personally would have expected, and likely Tesla too. Imagine my shock. It's almost like 6 months ago in that video, I was pointing out how price sensitive consumers were, and at its current price point, around $80,000 at the time, Tesla wasn't going to be selling squillions of these things because most people could not afford them. Fast forward, meaningful price drop, and suddenly they've got a year plus backlog. Now, I'd just like to remind everybody that as I record this, the list of companies that's actually making money selling electric vehicles globally today has one name on it: Tesla. My confused admirers, also sometimes known as haters, of course, will be telling me, "But Stephen, you're full of shit. BYD is making a profit too." To which I would respond, not on their vehicle business, bro. If it weren't for BYD's extremely profitable battery cell supply business, the company would be bleeding billions of dollars per year. Now, it's not bad to have a very profitable cell business. It's good for BYD, actually. But even at BYD's massive scale, the only company producing high volumes of electric vehicles today and doing so profitably is Tesla. Every company other than Tesla trying to sell electric vehicles to consumers today, trying to get to this sweet spot, is losing money along the way. Whereas Tesla is roughly here for the Model Y and 3. I think long term, probably here for Cybertruck, and they're not standing still. Over time, Tesla's cost to produce compelling vehicles will continue to decline, as it has for the last 20 years. This is very important. Tesla will soon reach this inflection point. They will be profitably producing vehicles in the mid to low $30,000 range. The number of consumers who can afford to buy them is going to skyrocket. While their so-called competition decides, well, do we want to sell a few vehicles here and lose a little bit of money, or do we want to sell a shitload of vehicles here and lose a shitload of money? There's one point that I really want to underscore here. The tip right here, this point is roughly, call it $20,000, representing 100% of the global vehicle market by revenue. This is the 50% mark for global revenue share in the automotive market. And this is the $25,000 starting point. Literally half of the entire global vehicle market opportunity occurs here. This represents half of the entire market. About a $5,000 reduction in price point from $25,000 to $20,000, and you have half the market. The other, roughly 50% of the market occurs between $50,000, although if we're being fair, closer to mid-30,000s, and $25,000. As discussed earlier, the new dramatically more affordable, at least temporarily, Cybertruck is still here, playing in the $75,000 to $50,000 US dollar price point, accounting for essentially 0% of the potential global market by revenue share. Yet still, we've seen how price sensitive consumers are here. As I've said in the past, a linear decrease in the price point creates an exponential increase in the number of consumers who can afford a vehicle. If this wasn't the case, what we'd see instead of this is over here, we'd see the addressable market share incrementally increasing as prices head lower. Instead, we have a massive inflection point and a skyrocketing share. Well, guess what? Consumers don't just buy new vehicles. They also use transport as a service. It's much more expensive today, especially in developed markets like the United States, than a personally owned vehicle. We can see on screen now, ARC's estimates here. In the US, $2.80 per mile for human-driven ride-hail in the US versus a personally owned vehicle, about 80 cents per mile, all in. But over the long term, ARC estimates 25 cent per mile cost for the average robotaxi globally. Obviously, it's going to skew a bit higher in wealthier nations and markets and a little bit lower elsewhere. So here's the analogy. Transport as a service today is here. The number of consumers who can afford transport as a service for 100% of their daily miles is approximately fuck all, and it rounds down to approximately fuck all. Over time, even as transport as a service reaches price parity with personally owned vehicles, call it 80 cents per mile all in, most people would still prefer the convenience of personally owning a vehicle. But as the cost to use transport as a service falls dramatically below the cost of a personally owned vehicle, you're going to see skyrocketing adoption, a massive shift in preferences, and a huge decline in personal vehicle ownership. Now, just want you guys to burn this onto your mind one more time. We'll call this about $30,000. We're now here around $25,000 US dollars, and here $20,000 US dollars. A roughly 25% reduction in purchase price for vehicles is a 10x increase in the number of people buying them. Another 20% reduction from there, that's the other 50%. So the final point here is that over the long term, ARK Invest believes that Tesla's Cybercabs are going to have a 50% cost advantage per incremental mile versus Waymo. Not only does this mean that Tesla reaches price parity with personal vehicle ownership and then is even more affordable than personal vehicle ownership per mile, but again, by way of analogy, it means that in terms of the rideshare market, transport as a service, Tesla is going to be able to capture this slice profitably, while Waymo is faced with the choice of continue operating here slightly profitably, fighting for this share of the global transport as a service market, or try to match Tesla on price per mile, lose money on every trip, and then go bankrupt. I wish I was joking. This will take a while to play out, but let's check back in 10 years and see if Waymo's still solvent. Want more content? Early access? Bunch of perks? Click the links in the pinned comment. AG1 has been part of my daily health protocol for almost half a decade. It's packed full of vitamins and minerals and helps me fill in nutritional gaps while supporting energy, digestion, and immune function. It also has prebiotics and probiotics to promote gut health. I take my health very seriously, and so should you. Try AG1 today by visiting drinkag1.com/SMR or click the link in the pinned comment and enjoy a free welcome kit with vitamin D3 plus K2 and AG1 travel packs. That's drinkag1.com/SMR.